It is my great pleasure to briefly introduce Julia Galloway, Roberta Lugo, and Aaron Toole. Okay. And then, I went ahead of myself. Sorry, we have it now. Okay. The arts have the ability to communicate across widely different cultures and nationalities, providing a universal link amongst the peoples who inhabit our planet. These links are timeless. When we recall past artists in human civilization, the image famously stated, art is the signature of civilizations. While handwriting may development of nuclear weapons and numerous current conflicts, confronting all of us with visual evidence of the continuing existential threats to human civilization. Satire, in the form of political cartooning, is a powerful example of art making a difference. In the upper left corner, this 19th century illustration by Heinrich Clay cleverly captures one of the essences of the human condition. The arts in all media, literature, poetry, and particularly the performing arts and cinema, have the potential to profoundly impact the perceptions of individual humans, creating a ripple effect that may resonate outward across our planet. Joe Boga's Pathetic Warrior in 2003. Cynthia Constantino's Self-Portrait with Gun in 2005. An Army Man with Balloon, Monica Vanden Duel explores the oxymoronic contradiction of war toys. Jason Walker's art eloquently explores with flashes at the intersection of the natural and human-made worlds. These pieces are titled Jackrabbit and We Burn Things, That's What We Do. The recently passed Marco Fields has long referenced pollution and the dangers of fossil fuels and nuclear power in his emotionally, environmentally sensitive works. On the left, the great Betty Laura Schuman's A Pussy in Disguise. Top center, Geo Lastimersky's Trump Sphinx. To the right, Kyle and Kelly Phelps' Insurrection. And I want to offer a big thank you to Kyle and Kelly for reminding us what a real insurrection looks like. My father, Nathan Notkin, was a lawyer and a World War II combat veteran who fought in France, Belgium, and Germany. For him, war was hell, and to his dying day, the horrors he witnessed were seared into his memory and passed on to me. I became an activist in drafters history during the Vietnam War, returning my draft card to the Selective Service System. I was reclassified 1A delinquent, beginning a long struggle with our government in my resistance to this immoral conflict. All progress depends on the unreasonable man. Unquote. In 2018, I ended my closing lecture at the NCECA conference in Pittsburgh with the question, can art make a difference? For this panel, I have chosen 3 artists, all younger than myself, to offer their perspectives on this notion. All of them have inspired me with their outstanding work, their seemingly limitless energy and commitment, and it is my great pleasure to introduce them. I first met Julia Galloway when she was a resident artist at the Archie Gray Foundation almost 30 years ago. She was a production father who had begun giving wide science, natural history museums, and botanical gardens, expanding its visibility and message beyond the narrow parameters of the art world. Juliet has recently been honored with promotion to Regents Professor at the University of Montana, where she has been on the faculty since 2009.
Woo!
Among her,
Yeah.
among her many awards, she was named in 2023 Artist of the Year by Ceramics Arts Network and awarded a fellowship from the United States Artists in 2018. She has had numerous one-person and group exhibitions, and her service to the field has been phenomenal as the most popular workshop instructor and a member of several boards, including NCECA. Her energy is boundless, and I can't believe there is only one Julia Galloway.
So, hi. My name is Julia Galloway, and I'm a potter, and I'm really worried about the environment. I grew up in Boston in the 70s, and those were heady days. Those days of great optimism and big brains at work. And the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston was my mom's favorite babysitter. She would drop us off, give us lunch money, pick us up at the end of the day. And there was something about really understanding those objects that we looked at incessantly there. And this is the 5-floor walk-up where I was raised. And that was my wheel that I bought with my babysitting money in high school. So it's been a bit of a long road. And but I think that from that, I developed some real sense of importance of place. When I was in the 6th grade, I went to by Paul Winters. And he was this early musician. He had whale songs in his music, and he had a wolf that would come and howl on stage. To a 6th grader, that was freaking amazing. And so anyways, I thought this was great, and I went on a whale watch, and I saw a whale, and it blew my mind. And that was when I also first heard about Greenpeace. And I thought, oh, Greenpeace, this is where it's at. But in 6th grade, you can't sign petitions. So I made up an alias. Her name was Brandy Myers, and she was 18, and she could sign petitions. So Brandy Myers signed petitions for about 5 years. And anyways, I'll just tell you that story to let you know about my kind of freaky passion for this. Any pots that look like where I live, like my bed where I sleep, or the cream and sugar bowl. This was my grandfather's chair that I would curl up in. Or this had my house right on it. You know, so my pottery's always been very, very rooted in place and space. So whether it be inside my house or my house itself, or in the state where I live, this is Montana. And when I started to get very concerned about the condition of the natural world, I tried to bring this idea of endangered species, with, of course, the fabulous whale on it. But there was something about how there was a conflict between the loving, domestic, comforting space and then bringing in this huge environmental problem into our living room. There was something about that that I couldn't quite figure out how to put those two things together. So I started working on commemorative plates based on this show that I had in California called We the People Take Notice. And it was a very, very informative show for me. And I started working on these commemorative plates, and there was something about, and these plates were fine, they were lovely, they had platinum luster on the back, so when you looked at them, there'd be a ghostly image of yourself next to the species. And I thought there was something about this that really worked pretty well. And but there was a sense to the plates, they only were powerful when it was a lot of them. When there was just a few of them, they didn't have the punch. So when I had a show like this, then they really started to have punch. And when people would look at this, there were so many that really would catch their breath. And for the first time, I saw people quite upset about my work, which as a potter was a complicated experience. But I sort of started to think about a sense of place being the country, being my country, being where I live, and also in some ways being my planet. I wanted the pieces to have a little bit more of a sense of internal space to them, and I wanted my body to react to them in a different way. The plates I was just reacting species in the continental United States. And they're carved, the portrait, each species gets their own urn, and they're pretty large. They're made to hold a gallon of ash, because that's what I would be if I was cremated. I'd be about a gallon. Most of us would be around that. So I wanted to have a human presence in with these urns, so they're sized for that. My job here in working on these urns is to make something that's relatively unseen seen. This is the problem with endangered species, is that we just don't see them. We don't realize that we're losing them, right? So there's something about this endeavor. It's about 1,200 urns, and it'll all travel as one show. And there's something about this endeavor which feels brave and scary and exciting, and it feels not unlike being on this little dinghy going up to these huge, huge fishing boats like Greenpeace did, and part of me feels like, well, if they did it, well, then I can most certainly do it. So
I was quite impressed at the time, and I'm still quite impressed. His work represented viewpoints of one who had directly experienced the extreme difficulties of poverty and racism. Roberto has always found ways to effectively incorporate these messages into a very personal approach to ceramic artwork. Mr. Lugo received his BFA from Kansas City Art Institute in 2012 and his MFA from Pennsylvania State University in 2014. In the 10 years since then, his resume is quite impressive, with many one-person exhibitions, over 40 works acquired by notable museum collections, and several grants, including a fellowship from the United States Artists in 2016. I'm still quite impressed. Roberto is also an amazing performer and poet, and anyway, I'll let him. Anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce our youngest panelist, Roberto Lugo.
I got a question. Raise your hand. How many of you guys are potters? Okay, all right, quite a few. And how many of you have ever heard of Hamilton?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And how many of you have ever heard of Notorious B.I.G.? All right, so I'm going to start off with introducing you guys to the 10 pottery commandments. Ever let your best friend watch your killing through reduction? That shit don't function. You gonna let them sleepyheads mess up your copper reds? Number 9, know your glaze is not fine. You need to sit that shit twice so it come out nice. And 8, oh, you think your pot's so great? Show them things to a potter and they'll get outraged because 7, you put it back with PC 11. I tell my students every day that Kintsugi ain't a substitute for compressing your clay. Number 6, be careful with your clay mix. You don't blow your vent tonight, you'll be angry all night. You'll have to make more because your clay's too short. And number 5, this is what I make to stay alive, so fuck you, pay me.
Yeah, yeah.
You can sell the pots for $10, that shit's free.
Yeah.
And number 4, I know you heard this before. She know first or she know worse. You don't pay attention to your glazes, they're prone to outbursts. And number 3, never trust nobody to open your kiln up. Because if they got a test towel in there, they're gonna fuck shit up. And number 2, make sure you wax your lids too. Because what I found so far is that nobody wants a lidless jar. And number 1, make sure you make things for fun.
Yeah.
Make sure you think twice before you give up those things that entice. You follow these rules, you'll have mad fun making stuff. Less time breaking stuff. More fun than yesterday. And run out of space to put things on your resume.
Yes.
And what we don't realize is the things that we do every day, guys, is what actually makes a difference. The people we foster, the culture, the things that don't go on Instagram, the things that don't get fancy awards, the things that don't get us the residencies or the grants. It's the way that we impact people every day. And I see those people here. You know, I see my former student Salvatore Annunziato over there, he's so much of a better power than me. And teaching him was really hard, because how do you teach somebody that's better at you than the thing you're supposed to teach them? Right? How many of you have had that in this room? Right? So that person taught me, you know. My first NCECA, I was rolling coils for you. You remember that? Right? Linda and Sheldon invited me to my first conference after graduating from graduate school. And every single island here, we have one person who helped me to be right here. So this is dedicated to all of you. I represent where I'm from. Recently worked with the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, who brings clay to the classrooms who don't have any art. Can we give a round of applause for that? If you are going to give your money to anywhere in America doing things for clay, that is the place. They do incredible things, and right now I'm working on a show, and we set up my pottery on the side of the street. And the idea was, how do we just engage with people who come from communities like mine, poor, impoverished communities that you don't have the time to do things like make clay. You don't have the culture created. If you're worried about food, you're not thinking the dish you're eating it out of, right? So all of the decisions that I make are based off of the ethos of how do I represent these people and make them proud. I think about this quite a bit because I was one of the featured artists in the Afrofuturistic Period Room at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And people might think that's because you exhibited so extensively, you've done all this. They hired a set designer for Black Panther, and she had a dream about somebody who makes pottery with hip-hop and graffiti plus people of color. And when she woke up, she Googled that, and I came up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is the long game, guys. This is about showing up every day and doing the work. Whether people applaud you or not, being involved in the community, listen to the people around you, even if you disagree with them. Coexisting is key. I show up on the street and teach people how to make pots, and the idea is maybe these won't wind up becoming potters, but for 1 second of their life, someone talked to them like a human being and gave them an opportunity to do something most of us in this room take for granted. That changes the world. I got asked to curate an exhibition at the University of Pennsylvania, and these are walls that have been up for a very long time, and I'm spray painting the wainscoting because that's the type of thing that I like to do to complicate the narrative of what people think Philadelphia really looks like. I get offered an opportunity to create public sculpture, and out of all the places in the Philadelphia area, where do I choose? I choose my old neighborhood, where there's documentaries about the drug problem in this community, and we take grant money, we teach people in the community how to create patterns, how patterns are made from all over the world. And what do we do with that? We take those patterns and we put them on the pieces. So these are works made by people in the community, for people in the community. And for a moment, they can step inside these works and become who is featured, who is important.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lesson for all of us, that all of our voices matter. And when we show up every single day, I think one of the falls of social media is that everything is so instant. You know, you
Yeah.
take a picture and you get likes, right? But the world doesn't work that way. I am here because of what happened in the Civil Rights Movement, right?
Yeah.
Those people didn't know that there would be a pot on the stage one day, giving poetry about little jars. And that just goes to prove to you guys that every day when you don't know if your work matters, if what you do matters, we're making a difference in this world. And I think it's, if the question is does art make a difference? I think I'm living proof of it.
Yeah. Somehow.
Here, I love all these guys. I'm the speaker of ceramics there. You see birthday work with two ceramic geniuses and giants, Emma Logan and Kathy Lou. I think this is a nice little self-portrait. That's me 100 pounds ago, huh? I looked good in the uniform back then. So just stumbled into clay, took the GI Bill, went from class to class. Got my stuff in the Randwick Museum, in the same room with Peter Volkus, who was my teacher, Ken Price, and it's like kind of surreal. When they called me at first, I was like, oh my gosh, my work is so weak, it's already been co-opted by the state. Having stuff in museums is kind of cool, but really what makes more fun is having the cups in people's hands, you know. It's not about my story, but it's, you take a cup back into your life and it's something you already know, love, and trust, and you can share stories. Wars, murder, military, sexual trauma, rape, that happens in civilian world too, but you know, go to a party and bring that up and see. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to say. I thought he deserves his own, like, president presidential seal, so I took the olive branches and the arrows away, and it's just too fascist. Instead of pluribus unum, it says the poor. I stole this image too. This is whatever. It was the Catholics or Protestants talking trash about the Catholics and the Pope, and I swapped out the head there. CB-87 cluster bomb. It's 202 bomblets in each one of those bombs. We dropped 10,035 of those in the night of Gulf War. So this CB-87 cluster bomb is in Limoges. Right, so where is it? Just funny, right? So it's this group show with people from all over the world, and then the American drops this 8-foot phallus in the porcelain show. Wait. This is what I think of all the time when somebody says thank you for your services. The Grim Reaper, like, good job, baby. I stole this image from a guy, Dwayne Booth, Mr. Fish. I stole the I modified it a little bit so it worked on print, and I sent him some cups. I was like, hey dude, I stole your image. I've only made a few. He's like, oh man, fight the power. The man. Next time in buckets, get a beer. I see CB-87 cluster bomb. Sometimes with the stuff, people send me their images, like in Germany, I was in Germany, like, oh, in Germany, we don't talk about the war. Can I talk to you? Take me to the side and tell me these insane stories, just like, so I feel like that dude Clockwork Orange, like, I'm a vet, I'm always going to be a vet, I never want to turn my back on vets. So I always got to listen to the story of people, like, dude, how do you deal with that? And I drink a lot. Yeah, like in the Marine Corps, we're all equally worthless, right? We're just different shades of green. People talk about supporting the troops. If you support the troops, then you got to support the communities they come from. A black man, 18 to 30, is statistically safer in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan at the worst part of the war. We're, peace and freedom. And Latinos, I don't know how they're going to do that. The Marines, whatever. We got to protect our people. And this is my fantasy. I want to build like a bunker out of bags of clay. And then just sit there with a group of people and take the wall down and turn into cups, right? You want to protect yourself, protect your community until temptation. Short people are, the light pictures about here, so.
Imagine a world with no arts, no literature, no poetry, performing arts or music, no film, no visual arts or crafts, painting, sculpture, or architectural design. In short, a world void of all human creativity. What would humanity be left with? Would human civilization have survived into the 21st century? Could it survive into the 22nd? Do artists really make a difference? Your thoughts?
Okay, if I start with that question. I think that we're getting some really clear representations of that. I feel like art is one of the most important facets of how we gain empathy for the human experience. And we're seeing art being removed from schools. Really important institutions that used to have pottery programs no longer have pottery programs. And I think we're seeing this intersection of where politics and influence are telling people that it's unimportant. But if we look at things like the ancient cave paintings, we can see, in Moscow, they're painting the same exact animals as they are in Argentina, 15,000 years apart, and there's no Instagram or any way for them to communicate with one another. But we're seeing that art is an inherent part of being a human being. And without it, I think we lose what it's like. I think politics are so polarized that you say one word and immediately you split a room apart. But if you can show someone a picture, of what it means. For example, I recently did a pair of sneakers, and in one sneaker, I had the Jibaro people of Puerto Rico singing on top of the mountain, living off of the land, and loving on their families. And it reminds me of people in the South of America. But somehow we're protesting Bad Bunny being at the halftime show because we think that that's the antithesis, where in reality it's actually the intersection. And so I think if we can remove constantly using words to describe something and show some people what it's like to be human, I think it's incredibly important. And years ago I wrote So when you cut the arts, baby, you cut the heart strings off the body that freedom brings. If you cut the arts to fund war, what are we fighting for? They tell us to paint houses, but not to paint a canvas. You'd rather see us in encampments than exceeding on campus. Without art, how you gonna dance when you ace that math test? Who's gonna sing your praises when you get that high mark? Without art, we're quick to draw guns. We're apt to sing war cries and dance around the issues. You wanna end violence? Pick up some violins. You see, because those who draw good were the last to draw blood. And those who throw pots were the last to throw shots. So when you cut the arts, maybe you cut the heart strings off the body that freedom brings. So when you cut the arts,
classmate's brother was in prison, and she got a peachy folder from him, and it was, inside it was all these like awesome drawings of like cholas and cholos and lowriders, and it was line drawings, and it was colored with skills, used skills to do the color on it. Wow. And it was amazing, but he's in prison, he's not out there able to contribute like he should. And I think that for me, the art is like, I can show you how to make my work, but that's not art. Trying to encourage students to bring their own voice. Like when the Borough came on the scene, it was like, where you been, man? Like, South Central with all these young, beautiful, brown people and smart, but they didn't have the opportunity to have the resources, and they're not on Facebook. I don't know how to find them. So just, but being yourself, and the world needs more freaks. I think there's so many people who are following orders. Like the biggest regrets of my life are people that I respected told me to do something I didn't feel good about, but I did it because I respected them, and that's on me now. So I just encourage all you need you guys to make your work, not
strong commitment to the immense undertaking of your current endangered species project. When and how did you first realize that pottery could function not only in the physical sense of conveying food and drink to the body, but also in the sense of conveying deep concepts and concerns, narratives to nourish the mind?
That's a good question. I think that when I turned 50, I felt like I've been trained as a potter, and a lot of my career I've tried to help other potters develop their own voice. And when I turned 50, I looked around, there's a lot of great potters out there. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Girlfriend, stand up. Is how I felt, like, what are you going to do here? And that was when I heard that within the next 50 years, over half of the species on the planet would be considered endangered. Well, that was turning 50, and that seemed like really, maybe that was a lot of loss in a short amount of time. And I remember seeing the AIDS quilts in Washington, D.C., and there was something about the profound numbers in that quilt that was undeniable. And since we can't really see as we're losing nature, right, we don't really see that happening, I thought, well, I can really make stuff visible. I've been getting cups in your kitchen for many years. So my job now is to make it really visible, these species that are sort of drifting away. My job is to make them really seen. So my interest in moving from this domestic setting into a larger, more public setting has to do with making something really be seen. So I can do that. And there was some plan to that, like the carving has this wow factor, right? When you look at it, you're like, wow, that really does look like a bat. Like the wow factor's right up there, and that's the seduction, right? That you can see this, and you can sort of see the skill. Skill is seductive, yes? Mm-hmm. So you can sort of see this kind of skill in that way, and then the clay, of course, is beautiful. And then we all have some relationship with death in our lives in some way. So then urns kind of relate to that. So
good and noble thing. So, the cups, right, someone said one death is a tragedy, it's a statistic. That's absolute garbage. Many deaths, 4 deaths is an incalculable tragedy. All of them had a mother and a father and potentially do something, a little piece of that hit them, and that's that. So the cup seems like the appropriate scale to talk about it, right? You can put whatever legend is, like on a death dad or a dead kid. On a cup, it'd be different than a large scale portrait. The other with the images of violence, I felt kind of like uptight about it, like I'm promoting violence, but then I found these incantation bowls, they're like Christian Creek, that they so like, that's just a gift to me to have a son. It's not the same as having babies, but you want your work to find a loving home. And I think it's such a more interesting way, right? So like, and I had friends that made cups for who passed, and at the funeral, the family gave the cups to other parts of the family that they're adopted in the family. Like, that's so cool, like, easy, you know, man, rich, man, fancy stuff, like, having somebody, you know, abuelitas covered with something that's way cooler. But again, it's the community, and I don't want $100 or $5 to be the barrier for somebody getting work, you know. Turns out capitalism isn't really so great. So I just like the cups that just, flow, and money seems to be an obstacle.
Used to grow with many references to various classical forms of art history, which you beautifully embellish with your personal narrative imagery. Please talk about your intentions, your reasons, in melding classical aesthetics with such contemporary issues.
Thank you. I think, when I first started to make pottery, one of the first things I made in the wheel was a fire hydrant that was a soap dispenser. Because I saw the wheel as a machine that made round things. I had no experience with pots growing up. And it was also the first time in my community, in a class setting that I've ever been around a class that was majority not Black and Latino. And so, in many ways, I always saw myself kind of as an ethnographer, exploring what is white culture. And I would look around and I would be like, how much tea are white people drinking? Because everybody's making teapots. Gallons of Earl Grey being strewn to and fro. And as I went through my time, I was trying to redefine this pot, and then I would have I just had the most incredible professors, Paul Donnelly, and he would just show us 30 different ways to make a handle, and we looked at your work quite a bit, Julia, when I was in school. And, at the end of the day, I kept thinking, I'm never going to be able to sell pots to people where I come from. That culture doesn't exist, and I have to coexist in the space and, create maybe opportunities for people in the future to do it. Because one of the problems with our entire field that people don't think about is if you don't have art in school, right? What is it that you use? What is the tool, the mechanism that we use to accept people in art school? It is a portfolio.
Right.
So if you don't have a portfolio, you take on student loan debt. And someone who has already started life behind takes on an immense amount of debt to become further behind. Me, as a quote-unquote famous artist, I'm trying to figure out how to get over that mountain to be able to get to the place where most people started, And I can't imagine that that's going to end anytime soon. So I throw caution to the wind, and I think to myself, all I want to do is make stuff that when people see there's a connection that maybe they didn't know, because blue and white pottery, orange and Greek pottery, orange and black pottery, all these things are so ingrained in visual vocabulary, regardless of where you come from, that I don't want to complicate stuff to the point where it becomes so scholarly that it ignores the people that come from to get the approval of the people around me in a higher education. So I'm constantly thinking about how to make my work really adaptable to places like hip-hop, because where I come from, we're looking at musicians, we're looking at basketball players, we're looking at all these people, and we're idolizing these things that are completely unattainable. And at the same time, we don't have examples like artists or potters to be able to say, you can do that too. So I'm hoping to be that, and in order to do that, I have to think about my audience, who it is that I'm really trying to communicate with. And I'm hoping to do things in a way that I feel like maybe have multiple entry points. Yes, there are complicated narratives. Yes, there are dualities, but in reality, my work operates in this really liminal space, which is where, I have this simple thing, this thing that references history. There is some sublime in it. There is a complicated history to a lot of the things that I'm talking about, but at the same time, somebody can just pop by and see it and smile for a second. And I feel like it's important as artists to think about, how to do things in a way that's not just about the people that are immediately around you, because I heard Professor Chris used to always put quotes on the board, and it was always these, really in-depth philosophers. And one day he just wrote a quote by a student, and it said, we often seek advice from people who are co-signing on bullshit, And I think we're often making things and just putting it out to people who we know will give us a pat on the back versus really engaging in the complicated conversations and putting ourselves in a place of humility where we can get feedback to learn as people and grow, which I think is probably the biggest gap in contemporary art altogether.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm always trying to think about how I initially saw art. How many of us loved Dali when we first saw it, right? It was like seeing two things in one, and the mystery and the excitement of it, And then I love having something that's like somebody can see and then feel like, whoa, like I caught the thing, And one of the greatest parts of my art and the gifts of being in a museum is that here, I always talk to the security guards because I used to be a security guard in the museum, and one of the things they say over and over again is teachers are always taking kids to this museum and they're telling them about all the 16th century tapestries and what this person's art meant and what they were doing at the time. And then when they get to your work, all of a sudden things stop and the student starts explaining to the teacher what they're doing.
Yeah.
Much more, and the people who have less have much less. So it's sort of a screwed up time. And I think that one thing I would say as an artist is become comfortable with selling and remembering that your work has value, right? And if your work sells.
Surrounding finances in the arts, I think people who somehow think that as an artist you're supposed to go out and make these really incredible things and do it all kind of like on the cheap and also take on $50,000 a year for school and somehow just be able to sell pots and it's all good, but the reality is that ethos is built on a history of people in our field coming from generational wealth, inheriting land, houses, not taking on any student loan debt, and then those being our educators and quite often telling us, that we should feel guilty about selling a cup or a vase. And I have gotten so comfortable with the idea that the folks who buy my work, I'm taking that wealth, right? And I'm then having the time and freedom to then go out into the community and do the things that I need to do, right? And that is so the antithesis of what I learned in art school. And somehow you're supposed to be this mythical being who can somehow eat and do all the things you need to do and live a comfortable life. Meanwhile, all of your work is available on NC. But that's not the way that it works. So in reality, I think that artists, one of the things that I learned from one of the great artists in our field, Yumi Horie, is a lot of artists have multiple streams of revenue. So on certain weeks, I travel to 3 or 4 different cities to have to give lectures. I sell my work on Instagram, Etsy, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I sell work anywhere from $10 to $85,000 to make my work available to so many different kinds of people. I give my work away for free quite often, but in order to do that, I need to sell the bigger pieces, right? So I figured it out on my own, and I think as creative as we are with our art making, we can be in the way that we put our work out into the world. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if people are criticizing you for that, they're probably somebody that comes from generational wealth. So
Yeah.
they don't understand.